The last thing I saw as the cold steel pierced my heart wasn't Jessica Miller's tears, but the look of profound relief she and that man, Ryan Vance, shared. "Caleb, thank you." Ryan's foot pressed down on my hand, his voice dripping with the contempt of a victor. "Without you playing the perfect stepping stone, how could my love with Jessica seem so epic?" Jessica nestled into his arms. The eyes that once looked at me with such tenderness were now cold, calculating. "Don't blame me, Caleb. Blame yourself for being the heir to the Shaw fortune. He's the one who's meant for greatness. As for your family's multi-billion-dollar empire, we'll be sure to look after it for you. My family, my dignity, my entire life, all of it had become a magnificent sacrifice for their love story." I took my last breath, drowning in a tidal wave of hatred and regret. And then my eyes shot open. The shriek of screeching tires filled the air, followed by my assistant Leo's panicked voice. "Mr. Shaw, Caleb, what's wrong? I just got a call. Ms. Miller is cornered in an alley on the south side." I was back 3 years in the past, to the afternoon where the whole tragedy began. Through the car window, the Chicago streets looked both familiar and foreign. My heart hammered against my ribs, not from panic, but from the wild joy of a second chance, laced with an infinite, burning hatred. In my past life, this was the phone call that made me bolt from the car like a madman and charge into that alley. I thought I was the hero swooping in to save the damsel in distress. Instead, I walked right into a setup, a play acted out by a group of thugs and the ex-Special Forces hero Ryan Vance. They broke 2 of my ribs and made me the laughingstock of the city's elite. That was my grand entrance as the pathetic, love-struck villain, the opening act to the destruction of my family and my own demise. "Caleb, we have to go. If we wait any longer, Jessica could be..." Leo was still pushing, his voice frantic. I raised a hand, stopping him, leaning back against the leather seat. I spoke in a calm I'd never felt before. "Leo, call 911. Leo stared, thinking he'd misheard. "What? Mr. Shaw, what did you say?" I said, "Call 911. I repeated. My voice was quiet, but had a new, unyielding hardness to it. "Tell the police there's a gang fight in an alley on the south side. Let them handle it. Then turn the car around. We're going to the Century Grand Tower." "But, Ms. Miller..." I turned my head, my gaze sharp enough to cut glass. "Leo, my father hired you. Your salary is paid by the Shaw Corporation. Right now, are you going to listen to me, or to some woman who has nothing to do with me?" A shiver went down his spine, a reaction to the ice in my eyes. He fumbled for his phone, not daring to ask another question. "Yes, sir. Right away. I'm calling the police." Turning around now, the car merged smoothly back into traffic, leaving the alley and its stage drama far behind. I closed my eyes, my mind racing. At 3 p.m. today, at the Century Grand Tower, there's a critical business reception. In my last life, I missed it for Jessica Miller. I also missed my one and only chance to meet Mark Peterson, a man who would become one of the 3 titans of the American tech industry, but who at the time was just a struggling entrepreneur hitting one wall after another. Later, guided by Jessica's divine intuition, Ryan Vance invested a measly $50,000 in Peterson's startup, Nexus. 10 years later, that investment had grown 1,000-fold, becoming the first cornerstone of Ryan's business empire. And I, the rightful heir to the Shaw Corporation, had handed that world-changing opportunity to someone else because of a woman. Pathetic. Tragic. This time, the script was going to change. "Ryan, Jessica, let's see how much of your fairy tale romance is left when you lose your biggest sponsor. As for me, don't bother me. I'm busy making money." We pulled up to the Century Grand Tower at exactly 2:50 p.m. I straightened my suit, catching my reflection in the window. A young, slightly arrogant face stared back. This was me at 23, before a hopeless love and a string of failures had eroded all my confidence. It was good to be back. "Caleb, you seem different today," Leo mumbled, trailing behind me. I ignored him and walked straight into the reception hall. The room was a sea of designer dresses and tuxedos, a glittering hub of Chicago's business elite. I didn't beeline for my usual crowd of deadbeat friends like I would have before. Instead, my eyes scanned the room with purpose. Soon, I found him in an overlooked corner. A middle-aged man in a faded plaid shirt and black-rimmed glasses, looking completely out of place amidst the luxury. He was nervously holding a glass of champagne, his eyes filled with a mix of uncertainty and anxiety about the future. That was Mark Peterson, the future founder of Nexus. I took a deep breath, picked up 2 glasses of champagne, and walked toward him. Mr. Peterson, a pleasure. He jumped slightly, adjusting his glasses and looking at me with confusion. I'm sorry, you are? Caleb Shaw, from the Shaw Corporation. I smiled, offering him a glass. My father is Warren Shaw. Mr. Shaw. Peterson's face flushed, and he fumbled to take the glass. Hello, of course. I've heard so much about you. His reaction was exactly what I expected. To him, I was just a spoiled heir who didn't know the first thing about business. He couldn't possibly believe I'd be interested in his project. I didn't push it, just made small talk. Mr. Peterson, I hear you're working on a new social media app called Nexus. His eyes instantly lit up as if I'd thrown him a lifeline. Yes, Mr. Shaw. Nexus is an instant messaging platform built for the mobile age, and its market potential is enormous. He launched into an enthusiastic pitch, terrified of letting this potential opportunity slip away. I listened patiently. When he finished, I gave a slight nod. The idea is good, but it's not enough. The light in his eyes dimmed. Not enough. You're only seeing the social aspect. You're missing the massive gateway that social media creates. I looked him in the eye and dropped the bomb. Payments, gaming, media, e-commerce. Mr. Peterson, you're sitting on a gold mine, but you're only thinking about how to sell the rocks at the entrance. Peterson froze, the champagne glass trembling in his hand. He stared at me as if I were some kind of alien. What I had just described was a vague blueprint he had only started to sketch out in his mind after countless sleepless nights. It wasn't even in his business plan yet, and I, a 23-year-old playboy, had just laid it all out in a single sentence. Mr. Shaw, I'll invest $50 million, I said, cutting to the chase, for 20% of the company. Furthermore, every mall, hotel, and entertainment venue owned by the Shaw Corporation will become a launch partner for Nexus Pay. $50 million, and the entire infrastructure of the Shaw Corporation to back it up. Peterson's breathing grew ragged. He stared at me, desperate to confirm I wasn't joking. There's just one condition. I held up a single finger. From this day forward, I, Caleb Shaw, will be your sole angel investor. You will refuse all other forms of financing until your Series A round. In my past life, this was the stage where Ryan Vance swooped in with his $50,000 and hit the jackpot. This time, he wouldn't even get a foot in the door. I agree, Peterson practically shouted, his face red with excitement. Mr. Shaw, no, Caleb. Thank you. Call me Caleb, I said, clapping him on the shoulder with a smile. Bring your team and your business plan to the Shaw Corporation headquarters tomorrow. Together, we're going to change the world. With that, I turned and walked away, leaving Peterson shaking with excitement. Step 1, complete. A few moments later, my phone began vibrating uncontrollably. I pulled it out. The screen flashed with a name, Jessica Miller. Over a dozen missed calls and a flood of iMessages. Caleb, where are you? I'm so scared. Caleb, I got beat up. Why didn't you come save me? Ryan got hurt trying to protect me. Can you at least Venmo me some money for the hospital bill? Caleb, what is wrong with you? Don't you love me anymore? A cold smirk touched my lips as I read the messages. Love. In my last life, I loved her with everything I had. And what did I get in return? A knife in the heart. Without a moment's hesitation, I blocked her number and deleted her contact. Then, I called my father. Dad, it's me, Caleb. My father, Warren Shaw's stern and weary voice came through the line. What trouble did you get into this time? How much do you need? In his mind, the only reason I ever called him was to clean up a mess Jessica had made. No, Dad, I said, my voice steady. I just personally negotiated a $50 million investment. Tomorrow, at the board meeting, I want to present a new plan to you and the other members. The line went silent for a long time. Finally, in a tone mixed with disbelief and surprise, my father asked, "What did you just say?" I replied, looking out at the glittering city lights. From this day on, your screw-up of a son has grown up. The next day, in the Shaw Corporation's boardroom, the atmosphere was suffocating. I stood at the head of the massive oval table, a PowerPoint presentation on the Nexus investment displayed on the screen behind me. Seated around the table were a dozen of the company's veteran board members, men who had built this empire alongside my father. They were now looking at me with a mixture of scrutiny, doubt, and a hint of contempt. My father, Warren Shaw, sat at the head of the table, his face an unreadable mask. "Caleb, do you have any idea what you're talking about?" My uncle, Howard Shaw, was the first to attack. He was my father's cousin and had always coveted my position as heir. $50 million for some unknown app? We could build 3 new hotels with that money. This is nonsense. Exactly. Caleb, you're still too young. You don't understand how risky this business is. This sounds like a child's game, playing around with the company's money. The objections came one after another. It was no surprise. In their eyes, I was a lost cause, good for nothing but chasing women and causing trouble. I didn't argue. I just calmly clicked to the next slide. A set of stark data appeared on the screen. Gentlemen, please take a look. This is the profit growth curve for the Shaw Corporation's physical assets, our hotels, malls, and theaters, over the last 3 years. I pointed to the nearly flat line, my voice clear and firm. The brick-and-mortar empire we're so proud of is hitting its ceiling. The spending habits of the younger generation are changing. They prefer to spend their money online, and we are being left behind by the times. The room fell silent for a moment. They had all seen this data before, but no one, least of all me, had ever pointed it out so bluntly. What we need is a gateway, something that can connect our massive offline resources with online traffic, and Nexus is that gateway. I raised my voice. $50 million isn't buying an app. It's buying the next decade for the Shaw Corporation. The future is too abstract. Uncle Howard sneered. All I know is that the company's cash flow is already tight. That $50 million will be like throwing money into a black hole. What if you fail? Who will take responsibility? All eyes turned to me. I met their gazes without flinching. I will. From my briefcase, I took out a folder and placed it gently on the table. This is a transfer agreement for all of my personal assets, my properties, sports cars, and stocks, with a total value of around $60 million. I looked directly at my father. If the Nexus project fails, all of this goes to the corporation. I'll walk away with nothing. The entire boardroom was stunned into silence. They couldn't believe it. The spoiled brat who once dropped hundreds of thousands on a handbag for a woman was now betting his entire personal fortune on a long-shot future. Even my father's stoic expression cracked with a hint of emotion. He picked up the agreement, studied it for a long moment, then looked up at me, his eyes searching mine. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." I didn't hesitate. I knew this wasn't just a business gamble. It was my pledge to my father and the entire board that I was a changed man. I had to show them I was all in. My father said nothing. The air in the room felt thick enough to cut with a knife. Just then, the boardroom doors burst open and my secretary rushed in, looking panicked. "Mr. Shaw." "Sir, there's a problem. Downstairs. There are 2 people." Before he could finish, 2 figures stormed into the room. Leading the charge was Ryan Vance. He had a bandage on his face and a furious, accusatory look in his eyes. Trailing behind him was Jessica Miller, her face tear-streaked and her eyes red-rimmed. They had crashed the company's board meeting. Every board member frowned, their expressions shifting back to disdain as they looked at me. "See," their eyes seemed to say, "a leopard can't change its spots. Trouble follows him everywhere." Uncle Howard couldn't hide his smirk. Well, Caleb, it seems your love life is far more interesting than your business plan." I ignored him, my cold gaze fixed on the 2 intruders. "Caleb," Ryan shouted, pointing a finger at my face. "What kind of man are you? Jessica gets attacked, and you hide like a coward. Now you've blocked her number. How could you do this to her?" Jessica began to cry, looking at me with a pitiful expression. "Caleb, I know I shouldn't have called you yesterday. I didn't want to cause you trouble. But I was so scared. Ryan got hurt trying to save me, and we don't have enough for his medical bills. I just wanted to ask for your help. Why are you being so cruel?" They were a perfectly rehearsed duo, twisting the narrative. My refusal to get involved was framed as cowardice. Their entitlement was packaged as something I owed them. In my last life, this was how they manipulated me step by step, making me pay for their choices out of guilt and a sense of misplaced responsibility. The board members watched the drama unfold with a mix of amusement, contempt, and sympathy for my father. My father's face was as black as thunder, his fists clenched under the table. The one thing he valued above all was the Shaw family name, our reputation. And I, or rather my past actions, were dragging that name through the mud. I took a deep breath. This was a mess from my past that I had to clean up myself. I didn't look at Ryan. My gaze locked onto Jessica, and I spoke slowly and clearly. "Ms. Miller, do I know you?" A single sentence silenced the entire room. Jessica's sobbing stopped abruptly. She stared at me in disbelief, as if I were a complete stranger. "C.A. Caleb, what? What are you saying?" "I'm saying we don't know each other," I repeated calmly, my voice devoid of any emotion. "Therefore, your medical bills, your trauma, and your hero have nothing to do with me. This is a board meeting for the Shaw Corporation, not a public stage for your melodrama. Now, please get out." My cold indifference was like a bucket of ice water dumped over their heads. Ryan's face turned a furious shade of purple. He had come here assuming the moral high ground, ready to publicly shame me, but I had refused to even play the game. "Caleb, you son of a bitch," he roared, lunging at me with a raised fist. "Security." I didn't even flinch, the word leaving my lips like a shard of ice. 2 guards stationed outside the door immediately rushed in, grabbing the enraged Ryan by each arm. "Let me go." "Caleb, you coward. You only know how to hide behind other people." Ryan thrashed wildly, spewing insults. Jessica panicked and grabbed my arm, tears streaming down her face. "Caleb, please don't do this." Ryan was only trying to help me. "You can't treat him like this. You were never like this before." I finally looked her in the eye, a mocking smile playing on my lips. The old Caleb was a fool. He thought he could win a person's heart by giving them his. And what did he get in return? Entitled demands and endless trouble. I shook her hand off my arm and took a step back, creating a clear distance between us. "Jessica, save the damsel in distress act. From this day forward, there's no role for you in my life. If you need someone to foot the bill, ask him." I gestured to the struggling Ryan. "He's your hero. Let him take full responsibility. And you, Ryan," I said, my gaze shifting to him, my eyes turning glacial. "I don't care if you're some ex-commando or a man of destiny. This is my turf. If you ever dare to cause a scene here again, I'll be happy to teach you that capital is far more powerful than your fists." With that, I turned my back on them and faced my father and the board, whose faces were a mixture of shock and intrigue. "My apologies, gentlemen. Thank you for your patience while I dealt with that. Loose end from my past. It has now been handled." I paused, picked up the asset transfer agreement from the table, and presented it to my father once again. "Dad, can we now continue our discussion about the future of Nexus and the future of the Shaw Corporation?" My calm, decisive, and ruthless handling of the situation left everyone in the room stunned. They had never seen this side of me. There was no rage, no loss of composure. Faced with a crying ex-girlfriend and a belligerent rival, I had surgically removed them from my life as if they were a benign tumor. It was terrifyingly effective. My father, Warren Shaw, stared at me, his expression a complex storm of shock and scrutiny, but beneath it all, a glimmer of relief and pride. He was silent for a long moment before he finally picked up a pen and signed his name on my investment proposal. Then, he looked up, his gaze sweeping across the room, and his voice boomed with authority. "I approve Caleb's plan. The $50 million will come from my personal accounts. If the project succeeds, the profits go to the corporation. If it fails, the loss is on me." The decision was final. Uncle Howard's face turned sour, but he couldn't say a word. Ryan and Jessica, still being dragged out of the room by security, heard everything. Their expressions shifted from anger and indignation to utter shock and confusion. They couldn't possibly comprehend how a scene that was supposed to ruin my reputation had instead become the very thing that cemented my authority and won back my father's trust. I watched their retreating figures, a cold calm settling over me. This was only the beginning. Ryan Vance, Jessica Miller, I will take back everything you owe me, everything you owe the Shaw family, with interest. After the board meeting, my father called me into his private office. seated behind his mahogany desk. The man who had helmed the Shaw Corporation for over 2 decades looked at me, for the first time, as an equal. "You've really changed," he said, handing me a cup of tea. His tone was reflective. "People have to grow up sometime, Dad." I took the cup and sipped it. "That Jessica Miller and a man, Ryan Vance. What are your plans for them?" he asked directly. "Insignificant clowns. Not worth my time," I replied flatly. "Once we cut off their supply line, they'll self-destruct." In my past life, Ryan's meteoric rise was fueled not just by his own supposed destiny, but more importantly, by me. Guided by Jessica, I constantly fed him resources, opportunities, and easy victories. My foolish attempts to suppress him only served to make him stronger, allowing him to turn every confrontation into a win that brought him more fame and fortune. This time, I wasn't playing his game. Let them play by themselves. How far can a chosen one get without his designated punching bag and personal ATM? I was eager to find out. My father nodded, seemingly satisfied with my answer. "It's good that you see things clearly now. The heir to the Shaw name can't be bogged down by personal drama. I may have signed off on the Nexus project, but the board is still skeptical. Your uncle and his allies are watching your every move. You need to deliver results fast." "I understand." "Then get to it." My father stood up and placed a hand on my shoulder. "I'll handle things for you here at home." Walking out of his office, I felt a surge of energy. This feeling of being trusted, of having expectations placed upon me. It was something I had never truly experienced in either life. I would not fail. For the next month, the office became my home. I personally led the team, integrating our resources with Mark Peterson's Nexus. Drawing on my knowledge of the future, I laid out a crystal-clear roadmap for the company, build a foundation in social messaging, pivot quickly into mobile payments, and then use payments as the core to build a massive ecosystem of gaming, e-commerce, and lifestyle services. Mark Peterson and his team treated me like a visionary. In every meeting, I was able to pinpoint their technical blind spots and strategic missteps, offering solutions that left them in awe. They had no idea that I was simply giving them the answers they would have otherwise spent years and millions of dollars to learn through trial and error. With the full backing of the Shaw Corporation's vast network, Nexus's user base began to grow exponentially. The first week, 100,000 users. The second week, 500,000. By the end of the first month, 3 million. When the Scan-to-Pay feature, Nexus Pay, was rolled out across all Shaw-owned properties overnight, it sent shockwaves through the tech industry. Venture capital firms were lining up, waving blank checks, desperate for a piece of Nexus, but Mark turned them all away. I had told him from the start, until we are true giants, we don't let anyone else's capital dilute our vision. And I, Caleb Shaw, was transformed. No longer the good-for-nothing playboy, I was now one of the hottest new names in tech investment. My days were filled with meetings with industry leaders and tech geniuses. I was so busy I had almost forgotten that Jessica Miller and Ryan Vance even existed. Until one day, my assistant Leo knocked on my office door with a strange look on his face. "Caleb, Ms. Miller is downstairs again." I was reviewing the latest quarterly report for Nexus and didn't even look up. "Tell her to leave." But Leo hesitated. She said, "She's pregnant. Tell her to get lost." My voice dropped, instantly turning to ice. Leo flinched and scurried out of the room without another word. Pregnant. Only the fool I was in my past life would fall for such a cheap trick. I put down the report and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows. Down below, standing at the entrance to the building, was Jessica. She was wearing a simple white dress, looking frail and resolute. She seemed to have calculated that I would be able to see her from my office, and she stood there, staring up in my direction. How pathetic. Who did she think she was? Did she really believe that if she just stood there, I would feel sorry for her and come down? I picked up my desk phone and dialed security. There's a woman at the main entrance. If she doesn't leave in 5 minutes, have her removed for disturbing the peace. If she resists, call the police. I hung up and closed the blinds. Out of sight, out of mind. But I had underestimated her persistence. She was back the next day, and the day after. Rain or shine. She didn't cause a scene or would try to force her way in. She just stood there every day like a sad statue, sparking whispers and gossip among the employees. Soon, the rumors started. Did you hear? That woman is Caleb Shaw's ex-girlfriend. They say she's carrying his baby, and he just dumped her. Seriously? I didn't think he was that ruthless. It's the rich, you know how they are. They just play around. The whispers eventually reached me. Leo approached me, worried. Caleb, this can't go on. It's bad for your reputation. Maybe you should just go down and talk to her. Talk about what? I scoffed. What is there to discuss with a compulsive liar? If she wants to stand there, let her. If she wants to put on a show, let her. I'm curious to see how long she can keep up the act. I not only ignored her, but I also had HR send out a company-wide memo. Any employee caught gossiping about executive management's personal lives would be terminated immediately. The threat worked. The talk died down. Jessica's one-woman show continued for 2 full weeks before she finally realized it was pointless. Her attempts to guilt me were like punching a pillow, tiring for her and completely ineffective. After 2 weeks, she finally stopped showing up. I thought that was the end of it, but I had underestimated the capacity for trouble that the chosen one and his delicate flower possessed. One day, as I was leaving a transatlantic video conference, I found my Uncle Howard waiting for me outside the meeting room, a smug grin plastered on his face. Caleb, my boy, congratulations are in order. I frowned. What for, Uncle? Oh, don't play dumb, he said, clapping me on the shoulder, his smile dripping with malice. Your little ex-girlfriend just gave birth to a healthy baby boy. You're all over the news. It seems the Shaw family has its next heir. My mind went blank. I snatched my phone and opened a news app. The headline was splayed across the screen in a massive font, the words stinging my eyes. Shocking revelation. Billion-dollar heir's secret love child. Mystery girlfriend appears with newborn, sparking potential family war. The accompanying photo was of Jessica holding a swaddled infant in front of a hospital. She looked exhausted, but her expression was one of maternal strength. Standing beside her, a look of righteous fury on his face, was Ryan Vance. He was speaking to a crowd of reporters, his voice loud and clear in the embedded video clip. The child is Caleb Shaw's. He needs to take responsibility for Jessica and his son. If he dares to deny it, he'll have to answer to me. The news story hit the public like a bomb, and the fallout was instantaneous. My phone exploded with calls, and the company's PR department was completely overwhelmed. Caleb, what in the world is going on? My father's call was the first I took. His voice was tight with suppressed rage. Dad, do you trust me? I asked, forcing myself to remain calm. I do, he said after a few seconds of silence, an answer that warmed me. But you need to fix this. Now, I will not have the Shaw family name dragged through the gutter. I understand. After hanging up, I immediately had Leo start digging. Within 30 minutes, we had answers. Jessica had indeed given birth, but not at the hospital in the news photos. It was at a small private clinic in a remote suburb. All of the birth certificates and medical records had been intentionally buried. The timing of the leak was malicious. Nexus was just about to enter its series of funding round. As the company's largest shareholder and chief strategist, my personal image was critical. A secret love child scandal at this juncture wouldn't just tarnish my reputation. It would directly impact investor confidence in Nexus. It was a brilliant move to cut me off at the knees. Caleb, what do we do? The PR department can't hold them off much longer. Every major news outlet is demanding a statement, Leo said, sweating bullets. What's there to panic about? I leaned back in my chair, drumming my fingers on the desk. They want to play this out in the media? Fine, we'll play. I dialed the head of our legal department. Mr. Davis, I need you to draft a lawsuit. We're suing a Ryan Vance and a Jessica Miller for defamation. For damages. Let's say $100 million. $100 million. Davis sounded shocked. That's right, I said calmly. And I need you to release a public statement from me, personally. What should it say? Something simple. I looked out the window, my eyes cold. Just one line. I welcome Ms. Miller to proceed with a paternity test at her earliest convenience. I will cover all expenses. The entire process will be live-streamed, with the nation's top media outlets and a certified notary present to bear witness. If the child is mine, I will immediately relinquish all of my shares in the Shaw Corporation and walk away with nothing. But if he is not, I paused, a grim smile spreading across my face. Then Ms. Miller and Mr. Vance should prepare to spend a very, very long time in prison. My statement was released through the Shaw Corporation's official channels and spread like wildfire. There were no excuses, no denials, just the simplest, most aggressive response possible. Willing to test. If he's mine, I lose everything. If he's not, they go to prison. The internet immediately dubbed it the most hardcore statement ever. The effect was instantaneous. Public opinion, which had been overwhelmingly against me, branding me a deadbeat dad, did a complete 180. Whoa, the stakes are high on this one. Who would bet their entire family fortune if they weren't absolutely certain? LOL, 1 minute, I feel sorry for the girl. The next, I'm grabbing popcorn for the show of the year. A live-stream paternity test? This is better than reality TV. I'm so ready. If that kid isn't Caleb's, then what Jessica and Ryan did is straight-up extortion. That's a serious crime. Suddenly, all the pressure was on Jessica and Ryan. I'd set a trap they couldn't escape. If they refused the test, it was an admission of guilt. They would become a national joke, their story completely discredited. If they agreed to it, well, I was counting on them to agree. I gave them 3 days. For 3 days, Jessica and Ryan vanished. Their social media accounts were flooded with furious comments from the public. Meanwhile, I went about my business as if nothing had happened, attending meetings, closing deals, and moving forward with the series of funding for Nexus. Just when everyone thought they had gone into hiding for good, Ryan Vance resurfaced, giving a statement to the press. We'll do the test. We have nothing to hide. Jessica has been through enough, and we will get justice for her and her son. His defiant response sent the media into another frenzy. The paternity test of the century was officially on. The location was set at the city's most reputable forensic lab. On the day of the test, the building was surrounded by a mob of reporters and curious onlookers. When I arrived, Jessica and Ryan were already there. Jessica was holding the baby, her face pale. She avoided my gaze. Ryan, on the other hand, stood protectively in front of her, glaring at me with open hostility as if I were the villain. Caleb Shaw, I see you finally decided to show up, he sneered. I could say the same for you, I replied, not even bothering to look at him as I addressed the lab technician. Shall we begin? Under the watchful eyes of dozens of cameras, DNA samples were taken from me and the infant. The entire procedure was transparent. The results will be available in 24 hours, the technician announced. I nodded and turned to leave. Wait, Ryan called out. Caleb, are you willing to raise the stakes? I stopped intrigued. Oh, and what did you have in mind? If the child is yours, not only do you give up your fortune, but you have to get on your knees and apologize to Jessica in front of the entire country. Ryan's eyes gleamed with a fanatical light. Done. I agreed without a second thought. And if he's not, Ryan swallowed hard, clearly not expecting me to agree so easily. He glanced at Jessica, who gave him a subtle, encouraging nod. Her show of faith seemed to bolster his courage. If he's not, he declared, gritting his teeth, I, Ryan Vance, will cut off my own arm and leave this city forever. The crowd gasped. Reporters went wild, camera flashes creating a strobe effect. This was no longer just a paternity test. It was a high-stakes gamble of pride, future, and physical well-being. I looked at him and smiled. A wide, genuine smile. Deal was all I said. Then, to the astonishment of everyone present, I turned and walked away without a backward glance. Ryan, you poor fool. You believe you're a man of destiny, which makes you arrogant and reckless. What you don't understand is that I already have the answer key. The 24-hour wait for the results was agonizing for the public, but for me, it was business as usual. I even had time to swoop in and steal another major opportunity from Ryan's future. On a construction site in the West Loop sat a plot of land that was once part of a lavish Gilded Age estate. In my previous life, Ryan had bought this land on a whim and discovered a hidden vault filled with priceless art and jewelry. It was the discovery that gave him the initial capital to start his own company. This time, I had the Shaw Corporation's real estate division acquire the land from the city for a price they couldn't refuse. When the excavators unearthed the vault, the whole company was ecstatic. Only I knew it was just the beginning. The real show was about to start. The next afternoon, the paternity results were announced at a massive press conference. The room was packed. Under the supervision of a notary, The head of the lab opened the sealed envelope. The entire room held its breath. Ryan, Jessica, and I were seated on stage, a safe distance apart. Jessica was clutching the baby, her lips white with anxiety. Ryan, however, looked smugly confident, even shooting me a provocative glance. I just smiled back. Based on the DNA sequence comparison, the lab director began in a flat, clinical tone. The probability of a parental relationship between Mr. Caleb Shaw and the infant subject is 0.0001%. A parental relationship is conclusively excluded. Conclusively excluded, those two words detonated in the room. A moment of stunned silence was followed by an explosive uproar. Holy crap, it's not his. Oh my God, then whose baby is it? Jessica and Ryan are finished. This is career-ending stuff. Every camera in the room swiveled away from me and onto Jessica and Ryan, whose faces had gone deathly pale. Ryan's confident smirk froze, replaced by a mask of pure shock and panic. No, that's impossible, absolutely impossible, he screamed, rushing the podium and snatching the report. This is a fake. You must have taken his money. You forged the results. Jessica collapsed onto the floor, sobbing hysterically. How could this happen? How? The lab director's face darkened. Mr. Vance, I demand that you calm down. Our results are unimpeachable and legally binding. You are slandering the integrity of this institution. I don't believe it. I won't. Ryan was seeing red, completely unhinged. I slowly rose from my seat and walked over to him, looking down at his pathetic display. Can't handle losing, I asked softly. It was you. You did something, he shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at me. Did something? I chuckled. Ryan, don't you get it yet? This was always a trap, designed specifically for you. My voice was low, but it carried through the stunned silence of the room. You thought you were playing me, but I was playing you. I wanted you to climb as high as you could, just so I could watch you fall. I wanted it to be a long, long way down. I turned to the ravenous pack of journalists. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, I imagine the question on everyone's mind right now is, who is the real father? I snapped my fingers. The doors to the conference hall opened, and my lawyer, Mr. Davis, walked in, accompanied by 2 police officers. In his hand, he held another file. Since Mr. Vance has doubts about the first report, perhaps we should take a look at the second. I took the file from him and held it up for all to see. It was another paternity test report, this one comparing the DNA of Ryan Vance and the infant. According to the results from a second, independent lab, my voice was as cold and final as a death sentence. The probability of a parental relationship between Mr. Ryan Vance and the infant subject is 99%. 10. The truth was out. The press conference descended into absolute chaos. No way, what a twist. The baby is Ryan's. So what was all this about? Some kind of sick scam. That is disgusting, making your own girlfriend parade your son around to extort another man. What kind of monster does that? And Jessica Miller, give that woman an Oscar. She's the worst of them all. Ryan was frozen solid, a statue carved from disbelief. The blood drained from his face as he slowly turned to look at Jessica, who was still crumpled on the floor, her face ashen. Jessica, what? What is this? He stammered, his voice trembling. She wouldn't look at him, just shook her head, muttering, I don't know. I swear I don't know. You don't know? Ryan exploded, grabbing her by the collar and hauling her to her feet like a rag doll. How could you not know? I was drunk that night. I thought it was. Jessica's words tumbled out, incoherent with terror. That's enough, I said, cutting through their pathetic soap opera. I have no interest in your personal drama. Now it's time to settle our accounts. My eyes fell on Ryan Vance's right arm. Mr. Vance, do you remember our wager? Ryan's body shuddered, raw fear contorting his features. Cut off his own arm. This wasn't a joke. Caleb, you can't, he pleaded. Can I? I sneered. When you stood in front of the cameras and slandered my name, trying to ruin me and my family. Did you think about what you can do? When you set this vicious trap to destroy my life, did you think about what you can't do? Now you want to back out. It's too late. My words were knives, twisting in his gut. He looked around wildly, but every face in the crowd was filled with contempt and disgust. He was finished. His reputation, his future, his love, everything was gone. Act. With a roar of despair, Ryan shoved Jessica aside and made a desperate break for the exit. He was trying to run. Stop him, I said calmly. The security guards at the door moved in, grabbing him as easily as an eagle snatching a mouse. Let go of me. Let me go. He struggled uselessly. The two police officers stepped forward, producing a pair of handcuffs. Mr. Vance, Ms. Miller, you are under arrest for defamation and attempted extortion. The evidence is conclusive. Please come with us. The metallic click of the handcuffs sealing around their wrists was the sound of their so-called destiny coming to an end. As I watched them being led away, I felt no joy, only a cold, quiet satisfaction. In my last life, they had stood on top of the world and watched me fall into hell. This time, I had simply given them a taste of it for themselves. The circus was finally over, and now it was time to deal with my next target, the one who had been lurking in the shadows, enjoying the show, maybe even helping it along. My dear Uncle Howard. 11. After the paternity scandal imploded so spectacularly, my standing within the company skyrocketed. The same board members who had doubted me now looked at me with a newfound respect, bordering on fear. They finally understood that the heir to the Shaw fortune was no longer a pushover, but a patient and calculating predator. My father, in a sweeping gesture of confidence, handed me full control of the corporation's two most important divisions, real estate and investments. I had become the undisputed second-in-command of the Shaw Corporation. With this new power, my first order of business was to clean house. I ordered a surprise audit of the Overseas Business Division, which was run by my uncle, Howard Shaw. The results were staggering. Over the past few years, Howard had used his position to set up more than a dozen shell corporations. Through a web of fake trades and inflated procurement costs, he had siphoned nearly $500 million from the company. The money had been funneled directly into his and his son's private accounts. In my past life, this fraud wasn't discovered until the Shaw Corporation was already bankrupt and undergoing liquidation. By then, it was too late. This time, I was going to make him spit out every last cent. The evening I received the final audit report, I didn't go to my father. Instead, I invited Uncle Howard to my penthouse. It was the first time we had met privately since my return. Caleb, my boy, what's this all about? Calling your old uncle over so late, he said jovially as he walked in, playing the part of the loving patriarch. Uncle, have a seat. I poured him a glass of whiskey and slid the thick binder across the coffee table toward him. Take a look. What's this? He asked, picking it up. As his eyes scanned the first page, the smile on his face froze and then vanished. His hands began to tremble, and beads of sweat broke out on his forehead. This is slander. These are fabricated documents. He slammed the report down on the table, his voice a mixture of fear and feigned outrage. You and I both know they're real, Uncle, I said, my voice dangerously calm. I'm sure the SEC and the FBI would be very interested in taking a look as well. He pointed a shaking finger at me, his body trembling with rage. Caleb, I am your uncle. How dare you do this to me? My uncle. I laughed, a cold, empty sound. When I was being crucified by the media, you were fanning the flames, paying for bots and troll farms to tear me down. Was that how you treat a nephew? When I staked my entire fortune to bet on the company's future, you fought me at every turn in the boardroom, praying for me to fail. Was that how you treat a nephew? Howard, let's be honest. All you've ever wanted is this company. You think my father is getting old, and you thought I was an easy target. You were trying to push me out to make way for your own worthless son. Every word was a hammer blow, shattering his composure. His face went from red to a sickly white. So now, I'm giving you two options. I held up two fingers. 1, I hand this report over to the authorities. You and your son can spend the rest of your lives in a federal prison. 2, I paused, looking him dead in the eye. You sign over all of your and your son's shares in the Shaw Corporation, resign from all your positions, take your stolen money, and get out of this country. And you never, ever come back. Howard slumped into the armchair as if all the air had been sucked out of him. He knew he had lost, utterly and completely. After a lifetime of scheming, he had been outmaneuvered by the one person he had never taken seriously. I'll take the second option. He finally choked out, the words barely audible. A wise choice. I stood up, no longer looking at him. I'll expect the signed transfer agreements on my desk by 9 a.m. tomorrow. I walked upstairs, leaving him to drown in the silence of his own ruin. 12. With my uncle gone, there are no longer any internal obstacles. My father and I began a radical overhaul of our business empire. We sold off underperforming brick-and-mortar assets and reinvested the capital into technology, with Nexus at the core of our new strategy. Under my direction, the Shaw Corporation made early-stage investments in what would become giants in drone technology, electric vehicles, and AI chip manufacturing. At the time, each investment was seen as a massive risk, but every single one paid off spectacularly. The Shaw Corporation transformed from a traditional real estate and retail conglomerate into a dominant force in the world of technology and venture capital. And my name, Caleb Shaw, became a legend in the business world. People no longer spoke of the useless Shaw heir, but of the visionary investor with a Midas touch. At the height of my success, an unexpected person reappeared in my life. I was leaving a charity gala when a figure in a waitress uniform darted out and blocked my car. It was Jessica Miller. She was thinner, and the years had not been kind. The youthful glow she once had was gone, replaced by the weary lines of hardship. Caleb, she looked at me, her eyes a storm of guilt, regret, and a flicker of hope. Can I help you? I asked, my tone polite but distant, as if addressing a complete stranger. I wanted to apologize, she said, her head bowed. For everything. I was wrong. An apology isn't necessary, I said flatly. Now if you'll excuse me, I need to get home. Wait, she cried, pressing herself against the car door. Caleb, I know I messed up. I really do. Ryan, he's a monster. After he got out of prison, he threw me and the baby out. He's gambling. He's in debt. She began to sob, telling me how miserable her life was, how much she regretted her choices. I listened in silence, feeling nothing. Was her life tragic? Perhaps, but it was the life she had chosen. The moment she and Ryan decided to use me as their personal stepping stone, their fate was sealed. And I interrupted her. Are you telling me this because you want my pity, or are you hoping I'll write you a check? My bluntness stunned her. Her face flushed. No, that's not what I meant, she stammered. I wanted you to know that I finally realized you were the only one who was ever truly good to me. Truly good to me? I laughed, finding the sentiment absurd. Jessica, let's drop the act. You don't miss me. You miss the life I could give you. Your grand realization only came after your hero proved he couldn't provide the lifestyle you wanted. I had stripped away her last shred of dignity, and her face went pale. We're done here. I rolled up the window. Drive, I told my chauffeur. The car pulled away from the curb, leaving Jessica standing alone. In the rearview mirror, I saw her run after the car for a few steps before collapsing to her knees, her body shaking with sobs. I looked away and closed my eyes. Jessica Miller, Ryan Vance, names that had once caused tidal waves in my life were now nothing more than dust on the side of the road. My life had moved on. They had been left behind, forever stranded in the past. 13. Another 5 years passed in a blur. The world changed. The mobile internet revolution reshaped society, and Nexus, with my guidance, rode the crest of that wave. It went public on the NASDAQ, its market cap soaring past $1 trillion, placing it among the world's tech behemoths. The Shaw Corporation, thanks to its early investments, saw its own value multiply exponentially, solidifying its position as one of the most powerful conglomerates in the country. I had officially taken over from my father as chairman, the sole commander of this vast empire. I had reached the pinnacle of power and wealth, achieving a level of success I couldn't have dreamed of in my past life. But it's lonely at the top. My days were a relentless cycle of meetings, reports, and social obligations. I was surrounded by people, yet I had no one I could truly talk to. Sometimes late at night, I would stand at the panoramic window of my office, looking down at the endless sea of lights, and a profound sense of solitude would wash over me. But I had no regrets. This was the path I had chosen. Compared to the utter despair of being manipulated and destroyed in my past life, this loneliness was a luxury. One evening, after finishing work, my driver was taking me back to my penthouse. As we passed through an older, run-down neighborhood, the car stopped at a red light. My eyes drifted to the window and settled on a greasy spoon diner. A man with a stooped back was carrying a plate of burgers and fries to a table. A long, faded scar ran down his face, and his right sleeve was empty, flapping loosely as he moved. It was Ryan Vance. Behind the counter, a woman with a perpetually tired face was working the grill, shouting at a small boy who was crying near the kitchen door. The woman was Jessica Miller. So this is where they had ended up. I looked at them, the one-time man of destiny and the beautiful damsel in distress, now worn down by life into something unrecognizable. Was this the grand finale of their epic love? Without me to serve as the villain and the sponsor, their world-shaking romance had crumbled under the simple, crushing weight of rent and bills. The light turned green. The car moved on. I didn't look back. Their story was no longer mine to watch. When I arrived home, my father was waiting for me in his study. He was wearing his reading glasses, looking at an old photograph of himself and my mother, who had passed away many years ago. "Dad, you're still up?" "Caleb." He put the photo down and took off his glasses. "Sit. Is something on your mind?" No. He smiled, but didn't quite reach his eyes. "It's just, today is the anniversary of your mother's passing. I was thinking about her. A pang of guilt hit me. I had been so consumed by work, I had completely forgotten." "Dad, I'm sorry." "Don't be silly," he said, patting my hand. "The reason I wanted to talk to you is about something else. You're not getting any younger, son. It's time you thought about settling down." "Dad, right now I know you're busy," he cut me off. "But a career can't keep you warm at night. A home needs more than one person in it. I'm getting old. I want to see the Shaw legacy continue." I was silent. I was almost 30. In this new life, I had my revenge. I'd saved my family. I had reached the top. But my heart was still an empty room. Was I still too scarred by the past to let anyone in? Or had I simply grown used to the quiet? I didn't know the answer. "I'll think about it, Dad. I promise." Leaving the study, I walked out onto the terrace. The night air was cool, the sky a canopy of stars. I took out my phone and scrolled to a long-forgotten photo album. It contained a single picture. It was of a girl, smiling brightly under a cherry blossom tree, a white dress fluttering in the breeze. It was a photo I had secretly taken of Jessica Miller in my past life. I once thought she was the sun. I flew toward her light like a moth to a flame and was burned to ashes for it. I stared at the photo for a long time. Then my finger moved to the delete button. "Are you sure you want to permanently delete this photo?" I pressed confirm. The image vanished, and with it, I felt a heavy weight lift from my soul. I let out a long breath and looked up at the infinite night sky. And in that moment, I understood. It wasn't that I was afraid to love or that I preferred being alone. I was simply waiting for someone who could stand beside me, not behind me or beneath me. Someone to share the view from the top. Maybe I would meet her tomorrow. Maybe it would take years. It didn't matter. I had all the time in the world, and I had learned to be patient. My life, my real life, had only just begun. When you stop being a supporting character in someone else's story, you finally realize how damn good it feels to be the hero of your own. Why waste time on love? Building an empire is the most satisfying thing in the world. End.